On the afternoon of October 2nd, 1996, tragedy struck on Crunchem Hall Elementary School, where a shooting spree took place, resulting in 15 deaths and 58 other students and staff injured, 8 in critical condition. Months prior to the shooting, 29-year-old Jennifer Honey has taken over as principal of the academic institution after abusive disciplinarian Agatha Trunchbull fled and was indirectly relieved of her duty as former principal. According to students and faculty, the students were throwing food and other consumption items at Trunchbull as a means to drive her out of the school due to the severe abuse tactics she enforced as a means to harm the students. Allegedly, this day occurred on May 19th of the same year. Ever since her disappearance, no one has seen or ever heard from Trunchbull, leaving many to wonder if she had left town due to a warrant being placed on her arrest for child abuse and abuse of authority, with a question that came up on many's minds on whether she was planning to return in some fashion to exact revenge on the staff and student given her sadistic nature. One such student is 7-year-old Matilda Wormwood. Wormwood was regarded by her friends and peers as a child genius. She was also Miss Honey's adopted daughter. Reports claim that during Trunchbull's academic tenure at Crunchem, she held great dislike and spite for children, especially Matilda. After being conned out of a faulty vehicle sold by Matilda's father, Harry Wormwood, Trunchbull's hate for Matilda grew to greater lengths, and at one point Trunchbull dragged the 7-year-old into a small torture room called the Chokey, which was a torture device Trunchbull used to punish her students for alleged bad behavior. The Chokey was likely inspired by the classic torture device, the Iron Maiden. It was allegedly this incident that officially led police and other authoritative members to take action in finding Trunchbull's whereabouts. Sometime after Trunchbull's initial flee from Crunchem, the school has gone through a series of investigations after controversies surrounding Trunchbull's actions and punishing results should students fail to follow directions. When Honey took over as principal, she ensured that this learning environment would be much safer and happier for the children attending and the teachers educating. On the afternoon of October 2nd, 1996, around 2:21 p.m., students noticed a large, bulky figure emerge from the bushes. The figure then quickly unleashed a semi-automatic pistol and an AK-47 and began firing around the playground. Staff became aware of the violence erupting when they saw students running and screaming for their lives. This prepped the teachers and other staff members to grab their individualized weapons that were intended to fight off threatening individuals wishing to bring harm to the school. English teacher Jonathan Skies recounted the horrifying incident when he witnessed as some of the students who were running down the halls as terrified and bloodied up, some of which could barely run. When Mr. Skies was asked about what he witnessed during the rampage, he had this to say: "I could have never seen this coming. One minute I hear kids laughing and playing with one another, the next moment I hear screaming to such a degree that left me deeply traumatized to this day. The screams alone traumatized me to a very intense scale. I grabbed my metal bat, ran towards the hallways where I found hundreds upon hundreds of students running for their lives. Many of them were covered with bloodied hands, shoulders, thighs, and even their abdomen. The pillars and lockers themselves were covered with bloodied handprints, and the floors were covered with bloodied fingerprints. Next thing I know, I hear gunshots coming closer. As much as I wanted to run in fear, I knew that I first needed to protect these children who were in just as much fear as I was. I was armed with a weapon, and they weren't." When it came to her attention that the school was under attack, Principal Honey, who was with Matilda in her old classroom, went to search for any nearby weapons to attack the oncoming assailant. However, their efforts were unsuccessful when the perpetrator located the two from the exterior windows. The attacker was disguised in an all-black military suit with a barrage of bullet casings strapped to their chest. After aiming their gun at Honey and Wormwood, the two quickly made their way out of the door, but unfortunately the two were struck by the oncoming bullets and collapsed on the ground. Both began bleeding out. According to police reports, Honey collapsed on the center of the classroom, lying on her stomach with her head down, with bullets hitting her spinal area and abdomen area. Wormwood collapsed right next to the doorway with her body lying in a C shape. Her head was sticking out of the door and her legs were barely out of the classroom. It was assumed by officials that Wormwood and Honey were the attackers' main targets given their immediate familiarity with the classroom and intentional aims against the two, which counters the perpetrator's earlier shooting at random attack method. The shooting would last a total of 23 minutes with 15 dead, involving 13 students and 2 teachers, while 58 others were injured. Of the 58 injuries, 53 were students and 5 were teachers. Police arrived at the scene, and by then, the school's exteriors were filled with blood splats and prints. The scene was so horrifying to responding officers that some of them were tearing up at the scene while others were seen vomiting due to the graphic sight. To make matters worse, some of the more intensely affected officers were parents to the children attending the school. One father, Cameron Haynes, stumbled upon his son Ryan's dead body. Due to the level of shock from his son's badly decomposed corpse, Haynes regurgitated violently before passing out. Nearby officers came to Haynes and were able to alert medical personnel and retrieve the unconscious officer and his son from the scene. As officers advanced through the school, they witnessed deceased and injured students and staff. Fortunately, paramedics on the scene were able to quickly gather the injured and critically injured school members off the premises and were taken to hospitals. At 3:01 p.m., Officer Caitlin Muniz and Frank Reese found Matilda Wormwood's body protruding from the classroom. Muniz and Reese ran to the scene where they also discovered the body of Jennifer Honey. Thankfully, Honey and Wormwood were still subconscious thanks to the bullets not hitting either one of their major organs. Sadly, however, Jennifer Honey would become paralyzed below the waist for the rest of her life when one of the many bullets that struck her did so from her upper waist, partially damaging her spinal cord from below. Wormwood would receive 188 stitches to her right leg, 45 stitches to her left leg. She would also receive 203 stitches to her abdomen area. Not long after the school was cleared out and the non-injured children returned to their parents who were waiting for them, the police immediately began their search for the shooter, who was nowhere found within the school's premises. A citywide search was officially put into action as police and authoritative personnel were desperate to find the perpetrator. When asked to students, teachers, and parents who the shooter's potential identity could be, many immediately pointed out to Agatha Trunchbull. When asked why they assumed Trunchbull could be the suspected attacker, many recounted her sadistic personality, the fact that the shooter has the same build as her, and the belief that they wouldn't expect anyone else to attack the school in such a calculated and heinous manner. The shooter knew who to target, which rooms to enter, and chilling enough, he quickly managed to access the school's financial safe and even knew the code. With these accounts taken into serious matters, Trunchbull was immediately named the main suspect of interest. Later in the evening, police were searching all over town to locate Trunchbull or any other clues that could lead to her arrest. Thankfully, not long after, sheriffs and officials were successfully able to locate her at a relative's house and immediately had her arrested. Weeks later, Trunchbull was taken to court where she was tried for multiple murders in her part of the massacre. It would only take 5 months for Trunchbull to be found guilty on 15 accounts of first-degree murder and 58 counts of attempted murder. To add insult to injury, Trunchbull was already in the midst of facing previous convictions involving acts of child abuse, child neglect, harassment, torture, and multiple counts of attempted murder from her tenure in Crunchem. It only took federal judge Eric Polk 2 hours to find Trunchbull guilty on all accounts and was taken to Pennsylvania's State Correctional Institution, where she was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole. Many claim that Trunchbull was a very heinous role model and even compared her to a psychopath. Though this news of the massacre came as a complete surprise, as they never would have expected her to have such intentions. Judge Polk had this to say after he handed out Agatha Trunchbull's sentence. "You are someone who is so cruel, so vindictive, cold, calculated, and evil in such a sense that even I, in the 28 years of my judicial career, am absolutely appalled by. Your actions and vindictiveness scares me more than that I've seen in other serial killers. You took the lives of many innocent teachers and children just because you harbored hate for them. You also murdered more than a dozen children simply to assert your hatred for them. The only reason you escaped the death penalty that I was originally going to hand you was because you had taken a plea for life in prison. You have no idea, not the slightest inkling of just how lucky you are to mess with a judge who was with wit's end from hearing how low-life and monstrous you are. You are one of the, if not the biggest low-life, spiteful goblins I have ever had the displeasure of meeting. You took the lives of many aspiring teachers and murdered many of the children you were once tasked to protect and guide. May you never see the light of day behind these walls again." Shortly before Trunchbull's verdict was read, many bereaved parents and staff members delivered their speech of impacts to Trunchbull in front of the court before eventually Matilda Wormwood and Jennifer Honey had read theirs. Wormwood had this to say: "I don't have much to say except that you are a very dangerous woman who has no respect and courtesy for human life or any other life. The day we got rid of you from the school was the day we thought we would never see you again, and unfortunately, me and the other kids had this underlying fear that you may return to cause further harm to us, but definitely not to this degree. You are, and always will be, a monster who isn't afraid to invoke fear into the defenseless, and I can finally sleep now knowing that you will forever be locked away somewhere obscure. Lastly, Jennifer Honey had this to say for her speech of impact. It was you. It was always you. It was always because of you that I had lived in fear, that I couldn't stand strong because you would always beat me down, and it was because of you that I have to live as a paraplegic woman for the rest of my life. At this point, I had many reasons to despise you, such as how you terrorized our school from your abusive rules, such as when you harmed my sweet little Matilda, and when it was you who hurt my dad, but now you're dead to me. What's sad is not the fact alone that you murdered many beloved and beautiful people in my school, but how you showed no remorse for it. You will live the rest of your life in some desolate prison, never to see freedom again, and when you perish, you will be unloved and forgotten, just like the very people you scarred and massacred. Wormwood's biological parents, Harry and Zinnia Wormwood, were initially made aware of the shooting after it reached national headline news during their stay in Guam. Worried for their former daughter's safety and status of the shooting, they reached out to Matilda and Miss Honey, assuming they were still alive. The letter read, "Matilda, we beg that you're alive and well. We don't expect to hear from you, but we're hoping you and Miss Honey are okay and safe. We understand that we may not have had a good relationship with you, but I hope that you can forgive us for being bad parents. We would have never thought that Agatha or Miss Trenchbull would do something so unthinkable and evil. We knew she was unhinged, but by God, we had no clue that she would become a mass murderer. Anyways, if you want to write us back or call us back, I'll provide our number below." Today, Matilda Wormwood is a renowned author and motivational speaker, touching upon subject of child abuse, charity, and her upbringing in an abusive home. She also speaks about her experience as a survivor of the 1996 Crunchem Hall Elementary School massacre. An accomplished author of her self-titled autobiography and motivational TED Talks, Wormwood has garnered immense love and respect amongst her fans and peers in her field. Jennifer Honey, despite her physical disabilities, pursued a career in acting and directing. One of the films that she directed is called Shot, was a reference to the massacre and her personal experience. She also acknowledged the deaths that took place in the shooting and memorialized them in the film's end credits. Sometime in late 2005, a memorial park was established to honor those who were killed in the massacre. To this day, it remains untampered and memorialized. Crunchem Hall Elementary School faced major backlash and scrutiny even before the shootings took place. Most of the accusations were stemmed from Trenchbull's abusive and inappropriate behavior. After the shooting, many parents felt that it would be better if the school was completely closed down, given its now notorious reputation. Sadly, however, this would be the case in July of 2006 when the school was shut down when it became aware to the public that it was being vandalized by hoodlums who embraced the massacre and praised Trenchbull.